Hey everybody, Hawk here. This video is being done in honor of Shad because his wife had it. Well, they had another kid, so he might be a little on the slow side. Not that he needs help from me, but he helped me so much, so I figure making a video in thanks to him probably good. So, what would I do for Shad? Make a video about dragons, of course. And I've been kind of wanting to do this for a while, but it finally kicked me in the rear end to go do it. So, as I was sitting here thinking about, well, dragons, as you can see, dragons are a fairly diverse group of diverse group of creatures here. Not just on size. Now, I'm using D&D dragons here to illustrate this particular point, because I don't have like a wyvern or anything, sadly. Never actually needed one. But you can see the just massive difference in size. Like, first look at this, okay? This is a standard 28mm dude, roughly. Okay. Now, you can see that, right? Look at this. He's the size. He's a little bit bigger than the dragon's thumb. Alright? Let that sink in as to how big this thing is. But then we go all the way down to this, where the dragon is, a horse, slightly larger than a horse. And then we go to the sort of medium-ish dragon size here. Now that's the obvious part. But then I sat there and thought more and more and more about it. And I went, man, I mean, dragons go from being nothing more than dumb beasts. Honestly, they go all the way from stupid beast to Smaug, to dragons I would say that are even, sounds getting old right here, even smarter than Smaug. I mean, you get all of this. Sorry. You go this wide breadth of things. And then, and this gets even worse, I have these two types of dragons, to see the types of dragons I have. You go from dragons that breathe frost, to dragons that breathe fire, to ones that breathe lightning, to ones that breathe acid, and that's just D&D. Then you get ones that don't have any sort of breath weapon at all, but instead have an extremely toxic bite. These are actually the more classical mythological dragons. If you go back to the earliest ones, they're pretty much just giant snakes with legs. And sometimes wings. Wings aren't even necessary. But then we can go all the way from those that are a little more than giant beasts that are particularly cunning for an animal, up to the Chinese-style ones that are basically God. Or gods, I should say. They're on such a tier. They make this thing look like nothing. We're talking absolutely ridiculous stuff here. So I realized that I cannot make one video to encapsulate all of that. I mean, my Giants video went on for 20 minutes, and there's not a whole lot of diversity amongst Giants on that, other than, well, size and... just size and intelligence got me to that point. And that was me agreeing on one size. Well, I can't agree on one size for dragons. I mean, if I do ones this big, I'm doing a disservice to dragons this big. And dragons open up so many more strategic possibilities in the field of battle and in wars that... more so than giants do. I mean, giants are great, but they're just great pretty much on the battlefield, and maybe in some large-scale building contexts, but that's about it. Dragons they fly, they breathe fire, they're hyper-intelligent, usually hyper-intelligent, sometimes they have access to magic, they're all sorts of crap. This is crazy. I mean, this would completely change how one would fight a war if dragons existed at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do 3 more videos after this one. And it'll make sense in a second. This video is nothing more than codifying each category of dragon. And I'm not putting size into either. Not really going to put size into any one specific category because things change drastically. It's more of their basic power level. Basically, their own innate powers plus their intelligence will put them into a category. Okay, what makes a dragon? It's a great question. What makes a dragon? Because there's a great number of things that make dragons. Generally, the traits that make a dragon are large, scaled, And I can't even say it has 4 legs. Most dragons have 4 legs, but I don't want to rule out Quetzalcoatl, because it is kind of dragon-like. I would say if you... I can't even say fly either, because Knucker dragons don't fly. They have vestigial wings, but they don't fly. I think it would just be... yeah, they have scales. They're particularly fierce creatures. There's a great many things that make up a dragon. So, you know, scales, a higher animal intelligence at minimum, a fierceness. They're highly predatory, usually very territorial. I think actually all dragons on some level hoard wealth. It's just a matter of what they value. Because European dragons would hoard gold and things like that, based off of the Nordic dragons. I believe inspired by that, anyway. Chinese dragons wouldn't really hoard things, but they did like to get things. They liked art, they liked poems, they liked, you know, a little more artistic things, befitting their intelligence. Wyverns... See, I keep calling them wyverns instead of dragons, because they're not really dragons, are they? They're big monsters that eat elephants and things like that. They're not quite a full-on dragon, are they? But for purposes of this, I'm going to call a wyvern a dragon. So, what you get from there is, so you get the smart, so there's our category, there's our broad definition of what a dragon is. Well, now we're going to start doing the categories. Category 1 is what I'm going to call the dragon beast. These are dragons that are, I would say, no smarter than an intelligent dog. That's pretty smart to begin with. That's definitely good for a war beast. It can be trained, it can learn tricks, it will take a rider, things like that. So, at minimum, they're probably twice the size of a horse, which means their wings are massive. So I'm pretty sure this little guy's wings aren't big enough. But that's because he's a model, and we don't want to have his wings being this size stuck onto something that big. It'd be kind of ridiculous. But, so you get them. And they will, of course, run the gamut from having fire breathing to not having fire breathing. But the one thing that defines them is their intelligence. And they will, of course, be of any size, excepting the biggest. Because I've never seen a beast intelligence dragon be this big. Now, if anyone has any specific examples of that, please stick that in the comments, because then I will add dragons of this size. Of course, as I said, they'll have all sorts of breath weapons. They will probably not have access to magic, because you have to actually be... I've never actually seen them, other than very basic things, like maybe shape-shifting to an extent. Maybe they could do that as an animal, but they'd just turn into another animal, like the dragon turns into a horse or something, which would be really, really cool, actually. So, there's the beasts. Then we'll go with what I call more traditional dragons. Or, I'm going to call it the common dragon. Because in modern fantasy and in modern role-playing games, this is sort of the standard. And I think this is D&D's fault. The dragons are smart. They're quite smart. Usually smarter than people, on average. No, maybe not smarter than the adventurers, because the adventurers are, of course, extraordinary people in and of themselves. So you get what these dragons actually represent. So you go from the lower intelligence ones, but they're still as smart as people, of these, the more animalistic channeled intelligence with clever traps and ambushing and whatnot, to the large, haughty creatures like Smaug and other great dragons of that type. These dragons will, of course, go all the way... Again, they will run the entire size, because we go from the Inheritance Cycle and Saphira, who's, I think by the end about that big, but she starts off being pretty small, all the way up to, again, I'm going to keep using Smaug as an example, this is a great example, dragons of this size, or a Chardalon from D&D, or a great many other dragons throughout all of fantasy. And they will, of course, have... That's going to be one crazy video, because they have just so much stuff to go over, because they might... Like D&D, they may have magic. But even if they don't have magic, they're huge, they're intelligent. They can make all sorts of savvy decisions. It's going to be crazy. And it's going to be a diverse list of powers, and that's going to be a long one. The final one will be what I call god dragons. And those dragons will probably not be small. Though, frankly, at that point, it doesn't really matter if they're small, right? These are going to be, like I said, primarily the Chinese dragons, or I guess in a way I might be able to count Fafnir, because he was invincible, except for his belly. It's a very interesting legend. I suggest you go check that one out. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I can go find a couple of examples in Western Europe of dragons of that caliber, where they're just so massive and powerful, they just kind of do whatever they want. Because Chinese dragons, they could mess with the weather, I keep saying Chinese dragons, I should just say Eastern Asian dragons, because Japan has dragons of comparable torque. So, just Eastern Asian dragons, they have, power over the rain. I think a couple of them turn into rivers at one point. I may be misremembering that one, I'm not 100% on that. But that video is going to be strange, because if you have dragons like that flying around, your world is going to be very different. And frankly, you know what, I'm actually just going to stop talking, because I'm going to start bleeding into that video, and I don't want to do that. But that one will be interesting to see from a world-building perspective. That one's going to be far less, this is what happens when you use these dragons on the field of battle, because frankly, if their dragon is that powerful, I don't think you're using it, I think it's using you. And I think I'll leave that there. But yes, so the basic categories, in short, we'll go for the bestial dragons, which are your wyverns, your knuckers, your... could almost say dragon riders of Pern, but that's not entirely correct, because those dragons are pretty smart, actually. They just can't physically talk. They kind of straddle a line between the middle and first and second group. So, you get them, then we go to our common dragons, which are your D&D-esque dragons, your very classical fantasy dragons. They talk, they have lots of power, they're usually big, they're usually hoarding lots of gold, stuff like that. And then we get to the final dragons, which are god dragons, and they just kind of do whatever they want. And it's going to be a lot of fun seeing where this all comes out and how this all works out, because I'm still not entirely certain myself. But yeah, remember to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.